guys, welcome to Surpass Illusion. I genuinely hope that everyone is safe, that everyone at this given moment in time, I've seen a lot of people from various places really taking the precautions necessary in order to prevent exposure and to prevent this pandemia to spread in greater quantities. I do encourage you guys to take your time to really utilize it to your best potential. I know quarantine is not the norm. It's not something that we are completely used to, but it is definitely an opportunity to do as we please, even if it's inside of our homes, to kind of appreciate the things that we didn't appreciate before because we lived in such a rapid paced society. So what did I want to talk about today? As we all know, a pandemic has multiple effects on our political system, our economic system, right? Our technological systems, on science and its research, on health, right? And especially on the social system, right? Social system, given the fact that we are the ones that create these systems, that we are the ones that experiment, take the opportunity of experimentation in order for us to either construct or rebuild a system in its simplicity, right, for greater purposes, or for a good matter, or for a reason, right? So given the fact that we as human beings are impacted, right, our social system is impacted, we are definitely experiencing an impact in the systems itself. So I am highly intrigued on how these historical impacts, right, create such a massive effect on our history, right, on our systems and our norms, our common ways of being, our common ways of living, right? How these are impacted in such a way that not really on how it is impact, but how it has the capability of changing in a small period of time. But what I am mostly interested in is what kind of impact has a pandemic have on human consciousness, right? I believe that we've been talking a lot about the precautions, unnecessary, precautions, protocols, and strategies that we must undertake in order to prevent the spread, right? In order to prevent the disease itself, or the pandemic, to continue its course and just do its natural purpose, right? And that is good. We've been talking about that. We've been talking about the amount of people that have unfortunately been impacted in lethal ways, or in how has this affected, or we've seen that in the news and social media platforms. But one of the things that I've heard a few maybe psychologists and sociologists speak about certain things, in particular human consciousness, right? We are haven't seen a lot of discussion in terms of human consciousness. So what I wanted to do here is I'm gonna make multiple videos on this, but I kind of wanted to speak about certain areas that are about human consciousness in terms of its impact and its effect, right? Because of the impact, like I said, this can go various ways. I'm not an expert in consciousness, but I have some experience, and that is what I'm going to share here. I kind of didn't want to make videos until I kind of thought about this enough in a broad perspective. I mean, there's so much to talk about here, and But in particular, I do want to share something, and I hope that you guys take your time to engage and kind of comment about your own personal theories. I'm sure at this given moment in time, psychologists and sociologists have developed theories about how has this impact not only society but human perspective. So, what kind of impact has a pandemic have on human consciousness? Well, first we need to explain what human consciousness is. I don't know if you guys have done any research on human consciousness or consciousness itself, but we don't have a specific, that the reality is that we don't have a specific definition for consciousness. I think that the simplest way for me to explain this that is coherent with everything that I'm going to speak about in this video is this: consciousness itself is a state of being awake, and that's the simplest form of expressing what consciousness is, right? And the state of being aware of our surroundings. That is one way of explaining or defining what is consciousness. Another way of defining human consciousness is the awareness or the perception of something by a person, right? And I think this can go multiple ways, right? The awareness or the perception, perspective of a human being. Another way of defining human consciousness is the awareness of internal or the awareness of external existence, right? How aware are you internally, right? And beyond, not only in a physical sense, right, but also beyond physicality, how aware are you? You know, the thing that most intrigues me in this particular subject of awareness is internally and externally, is the extent to what consciousness, how much consciousness can actually expand internally and externally. How aware can you actually become as a human being? You know, and to be extremely or highly self-aware, right, or externally aware. To me, consciousness is a state of being present, right? Present, or it is the presence, right? The essence. I mean, we can take a lot of infinite terminologies or a lot of various terminologies. I think that consciousness itself is endless possibility. That's, to me, that is the most general definition for consciousness. If you have a definition for consciousness, please feel free to comment below and ask questions or just simply engage. I think this video, the whole purpose of this video is for the purpose of engaging, not for the purpose of pointing fingers at anyone. So hopefully we are all on the same page in terms of that. To cut to the chase, I had mentioned before on one of my videos, and it's a common sense thing. I think that in order to build new systems, in this case, in order to build or expand in perspective, in order to construct new perspectives or new points of view, right, there must be a destruction of the old. There must be a destruction of the old. Maybe not in its entirety, but in terms of systems, in order to build new systems, it needs to be altered and it needs to be impacted. And when we speak about consciousness and perspective, there must be an impact on the human experience, right? There must be an out of comfort zone experience, right? Beyond the ego duty, beyond the ego's duty of protection, we must step out of that box that we were used to living in order to begin the process of expansion. We're definitely not certain that everything that is happening at this time is destroying everything in its entirety, but it is certainly impacting the various systems as a whole, right? The fact that the economy needs movement in order to be sustained, right? That says enough to me, given the fact that there are many companies that keep the circulation of monetary goods with the help of consumers such as ourselves, right? But the rate of consumers has greatly decreased due to the fact that obviously there is a mandatory isolation. So it's too soon, and I highly doubt it that the economy has fully collapsed yet, right? Of course not. There is some movement out there, and it's too soon for it to actually occur. But we can definitely say that this pandemic has changed the economic systems, as well as the political, the academic system, the technological systems, the science and its research, right? As well as our social system. Research has been conducted, and for those that don't know, we are, and I think it's kind of logical, we are humans. We as humans are social creatures, right? We must engage in socializing. We must engage and interact with other people. We need to socialize and bond with other human beings in order to maintain our social health. So there is a lot to say on how human consciousness is evolving at this time, with this pandemic impact in this isolation, mandatory isolation. There is definitely a lot to say. However, to me, the path in which we are heading towards in terms of human consciousness expansion or contraction is totally up to us to either choose expansion or contraction of view and perception, of awareness and of understanding. Is totally up to us. I've always say that the wall that really prohibits humans to reach higher levels of consciousness is at its simplicity, the ego itself, and its need to protect us. And this need to protect us is essential for us. There is a reason why we have an ego. To me, it is important to have that in certain levels. I think that everything in small quantities, right? Smaller quantities or anything in excess is unhealthy, but everything in equilibrium is quite essential. The problem is when we fall into the trap of behaving in a certain way, right? Running away from uncertainty, without implementing an intention of growth, right, of development, then we are in big trouble here, I believe, because we are acting out of fear and caused by the continuous practice of the ego's self-protection. I strongly believe that following the ego's commands continuously, in other words, staying in the comfortable spots, will not allow us to see life in a bigger and more broader picture or from different angles, because it is the experience that impacts the human mind, you see. So doing this for too long will condition the mind to restriction and constant limitation. The second wall is the absence of emotional validation, as well as our inner nourishment, right? If we don't acknowledge our emotions, right, and we allow time to slip away, right, without any care for our emotional distress, there will be no consciousness expansion, right? But life will kind of sort of feel like more like a roller coaster, right? Ups and downs with no equilibrium, or a repetitive cycle of incarceration, where we are experiencing a more unsteady kind of lifestyle. I strongly believe that in order for all of this to change, in order for to benefit mostly of our capability our capacity to actually engage in consciousness expansion, at the very least, we must step out of our comfort zones, or right, and even when we don't enjoy this phenomena, even when we don't enjoy certain practices, or the uncomfortable areas, right? In order to experience higher consciousness levels, we need to internalize more and externalize equally. We need a balance between our inner world and our outer experience. But let's talk about our social system and how has this pandemic affected human perception or human consciousness, right? I strongly believe that a lot of people are mainly talking about the strategies to prevent the exposure, as I said before, and we are constantly haunted by the amount of deaths happening as we speak, as well as the amount of people that are sick at this given moment in time. There is not much said about humanity's consciousness. I have heard about numerous psychologists that are doing their part on what they believe is best to discuss. A lot of them have placed their seed with their contribution on developing new strategies, so to speak, and methods to assist in the equilibrium of human psychological impact and emotional disability or distress, right? Though I've kind of seen a lot of people pointing fingers at one another. This is exactly what needs to come to an end, in my point of view. People are criticizing the methods being provided. I believe that at this given moment in time, humanity needs to come into realization that all of us are going through the same thing. We're all in our professions, in our differences and diversity, all in our specialties and our skills and abilities, trying our very best to build new solutions. I believe that even the social media and the news are new to all of this, where they literally look like they're reading a script. I think that we are doing this collectively, helping each other, and we should be grateful to have human beings that are every day trying their very best to find peace and tranquility, not just for themselves, but for all of us collectively. I think that it is scary itself. To me, it is scary itself to go through the uncertainty that this pandemic has created in our lives, to add more, negativity by continuing the separation mindset, where instead of us trying to expand, ourselves and others, we take the route of the ego perspective, where we continuously where we consciously or unconsciously attempt to diminish another human being that is trying to make the world a better place. And the reason why I utilize this occurrence and this observation is because my attempt here is for myself to grow in consciousness, and my attempt for you guys is for you guys to also grow in consciousness and build a more broader perspective, reach those higher levels of consciousness, so you can understand the greatness of living, the greatness of life itself, and the possibilities that actually reside within what we're currently living within consciousness itself. And then, to me, having this sort of limited mindset and close-minded perspective, this is exactly what will not allow us as humans to evolve in consciousness. To me, there is no growth of awareness when we discontinue something else, even when it is completely out of our comfort zones. When we disregard learning, right? When we close the doors of possibilities, and and when we decide that separation amongst us is simply something that should be done and practiced. This is not a contribution to expansion, but rather this behavior is an addition to more contraction of human perspective. So what exactly is this pandemia doing in terms of human perspective? To me, it is attempting to expand human awareness, right? This pandemia, in positive aspects, is attempting to expand human awareness internally and externally. But again, it is totally up to us to choose how much do we really want to use um, uh, um, this negative and fearful global wave of disease and convert it into something extraordinary, such as consciousness evolution. If you are an expert and you are a professional, or you are simply placing an intention to better society, placing an intention to cheer up people, placing an intention to create peace, placing an intention of health, of healing, whatever your gift is, I want to say, I want to express my genuine gratitude to you, and to those that, with or without full knowledge of what is happening, because we are in the same boat, in our current moment, are taking steps forward, right? So I really want to say thank you, because even though we are all living in an era of the unknown, so to speak, we are all collectively, in our diversity, right, and in our differences, trying to fight this biological war that has haunted many people for the past several weeks. Um, so thank you from the bottom of my heart. I hope that we continue fighting, and we thrive. We will thrive. But beyond all of this that I have discussed, I want to dive into the purpose of this video. I will make more videos expressing the same subject, but maybe taking a different angle, so please bear with me. So cutting to the chase, to dive deep into this, how has human consciousness been impacted by this great pandemic that has made its mark to history, right? The first thing that has truly changed, besides the common economic status, is that humans are not obligated to become isolated, and I had mentioned this before. Whereas before this pandemia, we lived in sort of a rapid pace society where we needed to comply with certain duties in order to survive, right? Based on our new current reality, we can put a question mark on the word survive. Why? Because it clearly shows that the thing that we used to call a need or a necessity, our new reality is actually showing us that many of those things weren't so necessary after all, and that there is more to life than meets the eye. That extreme everyday momentum, where we were constantly living paycheck after paycheck, or simply distracted to the point where we postponed many things. We postponed our exercising, we postponed our families' gatherings, we postponed our dreams, we postponed our immediate and macro goals, right? And that in which our hearts considered important. We never had the time to confront not only the things that we love, or the things that we wanted for ourselves, but we lacked greatly in the ability to take our personal space as a priority, and our core self-value. We also left that in sleep mode, because we just couldn't find the time for our own personal needs. And when I speak about needs, I'm not speaking about the needs like doing our nails, or buying new phones, or doing our hair, or some sort of entertainment, or even the new world order of necessity of placing a priority on toilet paper. This is probably going to become the next amendment, stating, when a global crisis occurs, humans shall not reach out for any form of goods as your first response except toilet paper. I strongly believe that, looking at the fact that people's first response in the middle of a global disease was toilet paper, I felt my levels of concern escalating in such a dramatic way that I started to question whether or not consciousness evolution is actually possible. me going back to, there's a global disease, there is a pandemic going on globally, and people's first response is, let me fill up my cart with toilet paper. To me, that it makes me just press the stop button and stop the whole video about consciousness evolution. I believe in change, so I really hope that we are expanding in consciousness, even if it's a tiny bit. That is enough. I hope that we have surpassed the illusion of toilet paper being a priority or an essential. All right, so I hope that we have surpassed the fear of not being able to wipe ourselves properly, or have the necessary equipment to wipe ourselves. I don't know. I really don't know. I just hope that we have truly understand our priorities here. But anyways, I believe that we need to take this time to surpass the illusion of competition. This is the time to build and construct and really dig deeper into the understanding of what is really necessary. Okay, and yeah, and I don't think a toilet paper is extremely necessary. I know that we must understand the risks and the severity of what this pandemic can actually cause. We are highly equipped when it comes down to receiving information about what we must do and what we must not do. All right, what can occur in terms of society and all the negatives and fear implementation propagated continuously in the news and platforms such as social media. I believe that it is important to remain grounded in the comprehension that this is the current reality in which we are currently living. However, when it comes down to consciousness evolution, right, consciousness growth, remaining in that constant exposure of the negative factors of this pandemic will only bring about more emotional disabilities and more depression and more stress and more anxiety, which is completely normal. But to me, if we know enough about what's happening in our world, then we should kind of put a pause and set aside all of that is not serving our inner stabilities in order to utilize our mandatory isolation to its fullest potential. We kind of must step away from all the noise and all the distraction. I strongly believe that this pandemia and the effects of human isolation is assisting humanity to evolve in consciousness. How? How is this isolation, mandatory isolation, assisting humanity in human consciousness evolution? Before all of this happened, we were extremely conformed with the uncomfortable, so to speak. Let me explain myself. We felt the depression, we felt the sadness, we felt the worry, we felt the anger, we felt the emptiness, we felt and we left the loneliness. We felt the loneliness, but yet we were so caught up in this world's rapid mobility that we failed to nourish our inner world. To me, I've always said this, and I think that the educational systems lack greatly in teaching this to people. Emotions to me are a great gift. Okay, I'll repeat myself. Emotions to me are a great gift. Okay, they are a gift that help humans become aware of themselves. Okay, the problem is that in a rapid world filled with humans that do not know when or how to stop, humans that prioritize the external speed and distraction before the internal care, there was no time prior to this pandemic. There was no time to stop, right? There was no time to acknowledge the feeling, in order to create this sense of acceptance, all right, and kind of pass the page. Like, something like, hey, I'm feeling a bit out of balance. Let me take my time to reconnect. To me, the biggest pandemia before this physical pandemia has always been the fact that we are disconnected. We've been disconnected. Therefore, being the emotions a pathway to connectedness in consciousness growth, we were unable to expand in this area because we lagged greatly on the mindfulness of inner self nourishment. I believe that we have confused for centuries the self nourishment with the physical aspects of living, with the physical nourishment, and we have distanced ourselves from the callings of emotions, right? The warning signs of it is time to listen to your inner world. Please quiet the outer realm for a bit, So how is this pandemia then benefiting our consciousness? I strongly believe that through the mandatory isolation, we are now able to listen to ourselves more. Okay, there is now no room for the world's distractions, and if we manage to get sort of distracted in a quarantine, it won't be enough to deviate us from confronting some of our emotions, you see. So how is this pandemia impacting human consciousness? Going back to that, well, the pandemia in a positive perspective, because we can go about how is it impacting in negative perspective and how is it impacting in positive perspectives, but in a positive perspective is giving us as humans the opportunity to expand. Okay, to me, any impact will create a more broad perspective. Any impact to society and any experience in which we are exposed to will create a more open perspective, because we are stepping out of a comfort zone. All right, we are stepping out of monotony, we are stepping out of routine. Before, we didn't want to step out of our comfort zones, we didn't want to step out of our day-to-day, what we're common or day-to-day norms. We rather survive, right? In terms of paying bills, work overtime, we simply rather ignore the feelings, the feelings and the emotions before putting a momentary stop to the external noise, right? In order to regain that sort of happier state of being, happier feeling, or that feeling of wholeness and completion, But now, human consciousness is expanding, to me, in a much greater scale all around the world, because there is only isolation available. I think that in a more negative, and I believe that emotions are exactly that. They are a sign that we must address something within our being and find a method to regain normality and bring ourselves to a more peaceful and natural state of living. So to me, the meeting point in all of this scenario is free will, right? Before, we had a limited free will in a sense where we were offered freedom, but we had obligations to meet because of requirements and survival, right? The exchange time in order to sustain your family and simultaneously sustain the economy, right? Now we have a different kind of scenario where our free will is also limited, but in a different angle, right? We're now experiencing a limitation in a physical sense, but at the same time we are becoming much more aware of the different levels of freedom, where we now see that we can in fact experience freedom of the physical, but that the freedom of the mind and the freedom of the spirit is equally important and essential to maintain, right? I think that even though the suicidal rates are increasing as we speak, there's also people that are regaining their emotional control back to normality, right? Because we are collectively analyzing and intuitively more connected, whether it is consciously intended or unconscious, an unconscious occurrence or happening. It is happening as we speak. I truly hope and pray that people begin to see, all right, beyond the surface, that we start decreasing bit by bit those numbers of suicidal attempts, and that we are able to truly ground ourselves beyond the five senses. and take this time to simply be, and breathe. Most of our frustrations and emotional disabilities come from many years of untrained mentality. I strongly believe that, and the way we view our feelings and emotions, if we view them as very negative, and we go with the flow of the emotion or try to block them out, then we won't experience any change nor any growth, and we will become more desperate. But if we actually change our view, about what emotion actually is, and what we can gain in a positive perspective out of that emotion and out of that feeling, we might have something there such as inner healing. So to conclude this video, right, what do you think is going to happen in terms of human consciousness? Please engage and please comment below. I'm highly interested in what you are thinking, currently thinking. Like I said, we will be doing more videos, but to close this video up, it's pretty long, right? I don't want drive you guys crazy on human consciousness impact, but I believe that consciousness will expand, meaning that our point of view will now be more broad, or at least we will be impacted now, and years later we can see the effects of this great pandemic impact. I believe that there will be many spiritual awakenings happening all around the world. There has always been spiritual awakenings occurring, but an impact such as in a pandemic, and in which we are experiencing now, can certainly make spiritual awakenings a lot more common than usual. I strongly believe that the enlightenment and spiritual awareness experience will grow much more compared to our old normal quantities of spiritual awakening occurrences, right? Because of this pandemic, I believe that isolation has been mandated. Because of the pandemic, isolation has been mandated. I believe that this isolation is causing humanity to become a little bit more sensitive to the voice of our spirits as an individual. So yes, I believe that we are certainly transitioning into a new world order. So whatever you guys think that the new world order is, please share. New world order can go multiple ways, but we are definitely engaging in a new norm. So stay tuned for more videos. I will be posting these in Espanol. Maybe not exactly word by word, but I will be posting these in Espanol. Estaré posteando esto en español. Así que love you guys. Please stay safe. Take the time to really share and love, set an intention of healing, and set an intention of security, set an intention through love frequency, okay? Set an intention of well-being. So love you guys. Peace. Sir Paz Ilusha. Ciao.